tell us what they're working on.
For their continued support, we would like to thank Simwood, straight-talking, forward-thinking telecoms. Simwood.com.
Why not make Cloudonics your communication partner? Go to cloudonics.io. You can find everything about the VUC at vuc.me, thanks to Bluehost, and thanks also to zipdx.com, the conference bridge, and to voxbone.com for local rate dial-ins.
Here's today's conference update. It's 17 days to KazooCon in San Diego, April 30th to May 2nd, kazoocon.com. And you can get 2 tickets for the price of 1. Buy 1, get 1 for all friends of the VUC. Just use the code VUCBOGO. We jump from San Diego, California to Berlin, Germany, May 14th through 16th. It's the 6th edition of Calorie World, probably the 4th that I've been to, and they will cover a wide range of topics from classical telephony to the newest technologies. But most importantly, the VUC Visions panel will be there. CamailloWorld.com. And we are walking and talking. We are walking and talking right now, ladies and gentlemen. And our guest, Emil Ivov.
Hola! Hola, buenos días.
Salut, bonjour.
Bonjour, mes amis.
Let us, so we're moving, we're dancing, we're walking. We've got Mr. Andy Smith, who can't move for reasons we won't go into.
And Michael Grace, who can't walk because, I'm too sexy for my walk.
Corrado Mela.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Standing today.
Okay. Emil, tell us why you're walking.
Well, first of all, hi, Randy. It's always such a pleasure to be here. And hey, Andy, Michael, and Corrado. Good to see you guys. I am here, first and foremost, because I love talking to you. And then while we were prepared, that's actually quite distracting. Is it? Am I that distracting when I keep walking?
Not at all. Not at all. Keep going.
Okay. You actually look like you're dancing. I guess it's just like I can't take my eyes off of you.
I'm walking here.
Okay. So the reason I'm walking is because I am and I have been fighting this battle with weight control for pretty much my entire life. It started, I think my relationship to my weight actually started to develop when I was even a kid in kindergarten. I was a very, very normal looking kid, except that I was kind of taller and bigger. And I think kids aren't particularly sophisticated. So when you need to insult someone, you always go for the easiest. So, you're fat, you're fat, you're fat. So that always came up as a thing with kids. So I started to develop this, oh my God, I'm fat. I guess I need to do something about it. And so I've always noticed my weight not really being a problem though, until I got in my 20s. And then I really started going into actual overweight. And it's been a very, very long relationship, and I've tried everything. Okay, I've went through vegan only stuff, just plain not eating, hyper protein. I haven't actually tried keto, but things like it. And I think for the first time in years, I feel that I'm comfortably in control of where I am. And you know, where you've been there, I actually felt the same thing when I got into real-time communication and then into dancing. Once you get it, you always want to tell everyone, look, actually, it's so easy. If I could only tell you what I'm thinking right now, it's so easy. I'm sure you would love it. So every time I see someone who seems to be struggling with their weight, I just want to say, oh, man, or oh, person. It's so, I wish I could tell you everything that I found out here, because it really doesn't need to be that hard. But to prove that actually this has been an ongoing struggle for me, I use the Nokia body scale. They used to be called Withings before. And I have a little history of my weight for the past 7 years. And this is where I got to a pinnacle. It was on December 15th, 2016. I reached 144.2 kilograms. You can see on the left of the graph, that's 2011. I was about 110 kilos, and you can see how it's been gradually going up. Then it would go down a little bit as I tried a new thing, some new diet. I'm able to be good for a while, and then it goes back up to even higher. Then I would have another dip, go back up, another dip, go back up, another dip, and then I reached my record. My very last.
It looks like quite seasonal, summer, winter.
I used to think that at some point, and then I stopped thinking it. It wasn't just happening at. I don't know. I personally don't think there was a particular relation to seasons. It was just, you know, plenty of other things. And it's funny because I started my last attack on body control, weight control, was kind of almost the same as all the other ones, with one major difference, and it was that I was tracking more things. I was trying to be more informed of the things that I was doing. And what do I mean by that is that most of the diets are pretty much like a belief system. You go in and you're thinking, if I follow these rules, then the gods of weight are going to reward me, and they're going to give me these, and they're going to let my weight come down. I just have to be good and follow these rules. One of the things that I followed was the hyperproteinated diets from Dukan. That worked extremely well. I lost a lot of weight, and then I put it all back on because I had accumulated so much frustration of only eating meat and not having any dessert for a long period of time that it snapped, like I just skyrocketed back to higher where I was. And it always ends up the same way, because the problem with the belief system when it comes to weight control is that you're kind of thinking it's kind of an all or nothing approach. You're kind of, oh, I've been bad, so I guess I'm not getting my reward anyway, so I might as well go and just binge eat on everything I can get my hands on. And that's a pattern that actually happens a lot to many people, and that's how you develop bulimic disorders, and that's how people end up in these binge eating patterns. It's really quite treacherous. So before I go on with what I did right now, I just want to show the end of that graph. Come on, there it is. This is what happened in the 6 months following that final weight. I lost around 45 kilos. Actually a little more right now.
Actually, what you want to do is the percentage of weight of the body weight loss. 33%,
I would say.
That's very impressive. Very impressive. Because I mean, if you weighed 900 pounds and you lost 40, it wouldn't be much, right?
Yeah.
Percentage. Yeah.
I guess so. Yes. So that's 33%. It's 45 kilos, 100 pounds.
Let's talk about how you're going to maintain that. Well,
maybe I'd like to start with how I actually started this, because I started it almost entirely wrong, the way I've started everything, you know. But so the first thing is I hated being fat. I really hated it. To start with, I just had trouble sleeping. Just turning around in my bed at night was a problem. I would wake up so that I would turn around in my bed. It's just ridiculous. And that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part is that for some reason, because weight was such a big thing always in my life, I kind of viewed myself as an unworthy person because I was just fat. And I hated myself for that, which is obviously not right at all to begin with, regardless of how fat you are. That really shouldn't impact your perception of yourself. So regardless of the fact that I knew that I've tried these things so many times and it always ended up working poorly, I just thought, well, I don't have any other choice. I just have to go and try the same thing again. So with a few variations, I started doing the following thing. I would privilege proteins, not eliminate completely carbs and fats, but just try to reduce carbs a little bit, completely stop eating sugars. And then I also wanted to do this micro fasting thing. Not wanted, but I started doing it. So I would skip breakfast. I would eat at midday, have a snack, then eat dinner before 8, and then be done with eating, and then have 16 hours to in which I don't eat. So I would only eat in these 8-hour windows. And I thought, well, that actually makes sense because your body gets into this mode of losing weight, and it triggers into deconstructing fats and all of this, which I today don't really think is accurate. And I also used to think that, look, it's actually some foods are better than others when it comes to weight control. And I want to caveat that most of the things I'm talking about are about weight control. I'm not saying I don't want to make statements about what's healthy and what's not healthy, because that's a whole different topic. So mostly concentrating on weight control. So I thought, look, protein have this have a few characteristics which are interesting. To begin with, they're not as efficiently absorbed by the body as other foods. Like you would take pretty much all the calories from fat and sugars, but you would not. You would only absorb some part of the proteins that you eat. You cannot digest everything. And then the other thing about proteins, which I actually think is more important, is that I really need to look it up. They release this molecule that actually impacts your brain satiety centers, so you feel full faster and for longer periods of time. And also, they take longer to actually completely be digested by your body. So I thought, this is it. This is what's important. I don't think that's the full picture today. But I went into that mode, and that's pretty much how I lost the major chunk of my weight. But then as I reached back to where I wanted to be, in spite of me being extremely happy about it, I felt it coming again. I could no longer control it because I was in this place where, well, now I'm where I want to be. Why don't I have one piece of cake? Well, why don't I have 5 more? And then I would go up a little bit and then go down again, and it was starting to be scary because I was feeling that I cannot sustain this for a long period of time. And this is where I discovered, when I actually tried to read a little bit more about all these things, and I discovered what the world knows, that it really comes down to the fact that it's all about the calories in and the calories out, and all these other things that I thought mattered so much actually really don't. So as I was saying, proteins, for example, are supposed to be not fully absorbed by your body, which is true. There's actual papers evaluating that. But the difference is that as you eat sugars, you would absorb pretty much 100% of the calories available in there. And as you eat protein, you would absorb about 80%. So yes, it's not the full percentage, but really, do you think that 20% is what's going to make the difference between you being obese and fit? No, that's not it. It's really how much you eat. And the thing that actually works, what the research seems to be showing, the thing that actually works about diets like the keto diet or the hyperprotein diet is really consistently, in all cases, people who have lost weight with either of those diets simply eat less. And now I want to be very clear on this. I'm not saying that these diets don't work, because people do lose weight, but they lose weight not because of some metabolic hocus pocus that happens in their bodies. It's just because of the mind hacking. Because you limit yourself to only certain kinds of food, you kind of prevent yourself from eating all the other things that were contributing to your calorie excess. You know, you can only eat so much cheese. You can only eat so much meat, and then you're tired of it. The real things that actually, and that's probably an interesting, a good time to get into why is it that we even get fat? And the reason is, I believe you can simplify it by saying, is because we eat for other reasons than hunger. And the other reasons that we eat for can be stress. You just feel like that's one way you want to cope with it, or you just like it. And that goes into the whole addiction problem. There are actually real food addictions. I'm pretty sure I'm truly addicted to sugar or the combination of sugar and fat. You can be addicted to anything. You can be addicted to protein. You can be addicted to sugar, to the combination of sugar and fat. You can even be addicted to volume. And when I mean addicted, I mean from the medical sense, you actually have the same blood markers as an opioid addict. You are really, really, truly an addict. And so this is why we overeat. And this is why it's important to consider the mind hacking aspect of diets, because you somehow need to cope with your desire to eat. That's the root of the problem. You need to balance your calories. That's really what solves your weight, but you also need to make it work. So you need the mind hacking portion of it. Does that make sense so far? And am I completely over the place?
Yeah, I think you're full of crap, Emil. The fact is,
yes, I am.
No, I think it's ironic, but I think losing weight and dieting has a pretty close relationship to fake news, in that there's always going to be some miracle. I mean, who has not known people who go, oh yeah, I got this new South Beast, got this new diet, works great. As I told you before we got on air, if you're following a diet, dieting always works a little bit, but it'll never work forever. You have to change your whole lifestyle. And I also mentioned that we had Randall Schwartz on, and he turned his life around as far as weight goes, and he found a thing that worked for him. And he lost a significant percentage of his body weight, and he's healthy. I haven't talked to him for a while, but at that time he was totally healthy. And I think part of it is the discipline, and also knowing like some of the really bad stuff for you. Like you talk about addiction. I used to love, all right, what's the worst thing you could eat? Probably those chips that aren't even potato chips, Pringles, right?
Right.
People on this series, by the way, I don't know if I did it much when we were on video, but I think I did. I had a can of those things, and I would eat those things, at least one can of those a day. And that's a pretty good example of something that's absolutely atrocious for the body. It has no value of any kind. Empty calories, they call it, or empty carbs or whatever. But really, all kidding aside, I think you have it in that, first of all, portion control. In other words, not overeating. And second of all, I think, anyway, for me, identifying the stuff that is bad for you and going, yeah, I think I'll pass on that today. Have it once a week. Have it once a month, whatever.
That's what I was going to say about the Pringles too. Because, yeah, you can have Pringles once a week, and I'm sure you'll be totally fine. It's when you get into, oh, boy, I really like this stuff, I want to have another pack. That's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, once and twice a day, you can't do it. And you need to identify that stuff. So if you're really, really, really into spinach, kale, or green beans, you can have that 3 times a day if you want. It won't hurt you, probably.
Right.
But if you're really, really, really into Doritos, sorry to mention brand names, chips, Pringles, anything that's got all this polyunsaturated fats in it, fries, French fries. I love French fries. We'll have it once a week, maybe at the most. But anything that you do more than once, anything you do daily is really, hey, Emil, on programming, when you try to make a programming more efficient, what do? You look for the loops, right? Because the stuff that you're doing most of the time needs to be reduced, right?
Right, exactly. You go in and you look where is your CPU time spent, and then you go and solve it. And actually, I think this is really, I said the main difference. You remember, I started this the wrong way. I started it thinking, oh, okay, let's go and eat protein. The one other thing that I also started doing during that micro fasting thing and trying to control a little bit what I had, and I think that really made the difference, was that I said, okay, I'm going to make sure that I have a minimum activity. I'm going to start walking. I'm going to make sure that I do my 10,000 steps a day. And I think this is something that made a huge difference, because I was counting them. I would do it with my phone on, with the watch. And I would make sure that consistently that I did my 10,000 steps. I actually started doing more later on. I started doing 20. Now I'm doing about 25, 30 a day. And the fact that I could check that I've actually done them was, oh, hey, James.
Don't stop, James.
I've done my 10,000 steps today.
This whole thing is a subject that's very close to your heart at the moment.
Well, clearly.
The fact that I could check that I'm where I am standing in my day, that I've done my 10 or 20,000 steps, was really a game changer, because it was no longer about thinking whether or not I kind of did some sport, now I can have an extra thing. No, now I was tracking them and knowing where I was. And in that same vein, I think what changed, I kind of ended losing my weight around December last year, November, December. The thing that I've been using to maintain it ever since is calorie counting, which is kind of tedious, but it is extremely accurate. And I know at any point, this is, I think, one thing that has changed in the past 10 years. Now that with all these wearables, for example, I'm brands, but I use an Apple Watch. And the Apple Watch has this thing. It tells you how much calories, active calories you spend in a day, in addition to your basal metabolic rate. Yeah, and so you go, that thing actually tracks them pretty well. It's not 100% accurate, but it's accurate enough. And add to that some calorie counting app, like I'm using Lose It, but there's plenty of others. So go and just enter approximately what you're eating. It doesn't need to be 100% accurate. You just need to be in the ballpark. And then you have it. Like, how much calories you've spent, how much calories you've eaten, and that is all there is to it. And that's the only thing that there is to it. It's not about, but I've eaten too much fat. Doesn't matter. It's just that many calories. Your body cannot make up extra calories and create fat if you didn't eat them. So I've eaten 10 Kit Kats. Well, 10 Kit Kats is about what, maybe 1,500 calories. That's less than your daily budget for most people. So if that's all you've eaten, you're probably fine. It doesn't matter it was sugar. Now, obviously, if you sustain that for a longer period of time, you're going to have other problems, because just eating Kit Kats doesn't give you all the vitamins you need and all the fiber, and your intestinal flora would suffer. But from a weight control perspective, you could be eating only sugar and still not be fat if the calorie count is right. So this, I think, was the main game changer for me. Track calories in, calories out, and then try to find a way to not make it sufferable. Trying to mind hack yourself around, okay, I'm good with just one Snickers bar or just one piece of cake, and cut it there.
As you said, it's the basic metabolism, probably the start of the reasoning. That is something that is individual, is like a fingerprint. So each one of us has probably a different metabolism. It will metabolize fats, carbs, and
Kit Kat.
Kit Kat.
in different ways. A serving of these is just 104 calories. So it's not that much, because in fact it's mostly wafer. But starting from your basic metabolism is probably the starting point that you need to follow, and then build upon it, not to take too many calories on top, and then try to balance what you get in with what you get out. Standard. Probably trying to use calories that you can burn quicker, rather than those that are at risk of accumulating like fats.
Yeah, actually the quicker thing is important, because I believe that's one of the things that go in a little bit into mind hacking. One of the problems that you're going to have with sugars, in addition to the fact that your body likes it and you want more of it, another problem is that it is so efficiently metabolized that very, very quickly it's going to be out of your digestive system, and then you're going to feel hungry again. You're going to feel empty, and you're going to feel, I'm ready to eat again. Well, no, you don't need to, because you still have these excess calories that have been stored either in the form of glycogen or maybe even fat. So make sure that you spend them first. And if you think that makes you suffer, well, then don't eat that many sugars, because you obviously are not coping that well with them. But that really is pretty cool. Another thing, fun fact that I found out, you know what happened to all the fat that I lost? You know what happens to fat when you lose it? Where does it go? What do you guys think?
I want to know.
Poop.
No, actually, that's what I used to think. I thought it goes out in poop. It doesn't. it's funny because I was talking to a friend once, and there was a skinny friend and an overweight friend, and the skinny friend was saying, I don't understand how it is that you put on weight. I just can't put on weight. And the overweight friend said, oh, for me, it's easy. I just have to breathe and I put on weight. So that was a funny joke. But the interesting part is that you just have to breathe in order to lose it. The fat, the carbon from your fat is actually exits your body as carbon dioxide. This is how you lose the fat, which is the poop is just the stuff that you put in your mouth and then it goes out of it. But really the fat goes out in terms of as carbon dioxide, which I found fascinating. Anyways.
So you're responsible for global warming then? All that CO2 that you've...
I guess so, yes. Yes. Yeah, I suppose so. I'll take that on myself. Fine, now I'll go and buy electric cars.
I'm not sure I totally approve of this new slimline Emil, because I kind of miss the old Emil a bit.
Well, yeah, I can send you pictures, but I can tell you, James, I feel extremely, extremely well today. It was a challenge for me to get. I have a 2-story house. It was a challenge for me to get to my son's bedroom on the 2nd floor. I would just, my heart would start pounding. I was pretty sure that I had heart problems because I would get these arrhythmias all the time. And today I just feel amazing. It's,
Jay Moore, comedian who has a podcast, once said, and I thought that was interesting. You see, if you look around, you'll see old people smoking, but you don't see that many obese old people. And if you think carefully about that, that's actually true.
Yeah.
In other words, being obese, seriously obese, will kill you more so than lung cancer or emphysema.
Yeah, I guess I can believe that. Now, speaking of obese, there's one other discovery that I made while I was on my weight loss trip. We all keep talking about body mass index. And I used to kind of swear by this metric. And, I have to be between 20 and 25. And shit, I'm not there, so there must be a problem. In fact, I would say that this probably contributed to at least a couple of my quick weight gains, because I would try to push myself very hard to go into the 20 to 25 zone of body mass index, and where I didn't need to, but pushing myself too hard made me overweight afterwards. And now here's the thing. According to body mass index, I'm overweight now by 5 or 6 kilos. And
it is very much an approximate measure. No one ever said it. The people who behind that, it's just a, what do you call it? A thumbnail? No, there's a word for that. Anyway, the point is, it is not meant to be the exact measure of your.
It is not. It actually
it can be wrong.
It's created by sociologists, so it wasn't even doctors or biologists or anything like that. It was sociologists. They said there's a problem with this formula, especially for people who are short.
Yeah.
In which case they would always appear too skinny, or people who are tall who would always appear too fat, according to that. The whole point of the formula was to give you a rough idea of how fatty you are, how much fat you have. Well, guess what? Today, we have a bunch of scales on the market that do that thing better, although they're not super accurate. But if you're really interested, you might go into that. Now, again, I am the very maximum allowed to me by this formula is 4 kilos less than what I'm now. So learning not to pay attention to that was also something curious that came out of this.
Let me ask you something, Emil, since we're in our témoignage here. Don't you think, because what I've seen a lot of, and I'm very guilty of this, by the way, eating too fast. So one of the articles I read not too long ago, which I think is very true, is that when you're hungry, you eat really fast, and that makes you eat too much.
Yes.
Because in other words, you don't, first of all, to get down to the physics of the things or the physiology of it, we have a digestive system that begins with saliva in your mouth, breaking things down. And if you don't leave the stuff in your mouth, and believe me, I speak from experience because I eat too fast. So I don't do this, but the ideal thing is to think more about it. It's the games like, chewing 100 times or whatever, who has time for that? But the main thing is to not continuously shovel the food into your mouth. And I'm horribly guilty of that myself, but I know about it. And I think that in my case, when I lost a lot of weight the last time I needed to, most of that had to do with identifying the really horrible stuff that I was eating. Like I mentioned, Pringles or chips, Doritos, that kind of thing, because you're going to chain eat that stuff, whatever it is. And it might be stuff that's not as abominable as junk food. But the other thing is controlling, just adding to what you're saying, controlling. When you're in a restaurant, you need to figure out what you need to eat. When you're at home, if you don't have a lot of time to cook, when you cook, you have perfect control of everything. So then if you're cooking, you're eating what you need to eat, and you just work it out and do that. But as soon as you're not cooking, if you're someplace where you can't cook, or if you're on the road, or if you're in a restaurant, you have to determine the things that you can eat that are not going to cause problems, I guess. So
there's absolutely that. And to me personally, the solution to that, again, I'm sorry to sound like a broken record here, was the calorie counting, because this provides you with a quick answer of, look, I'm outside now. I'm out of my routine. I have to eat something new because I don't have my kale salad at this place where I am. What can I eat? And calorie count gives you a very quick answer. Here, this seems to be like a 300-gram steak. This is that many calories, and this is that much bread, which is that many calories, and you just eat that, and you're still in your budget, and you're fine. So to me, that is also solved by just being mindful of your calories, and you don't have to go all the way to counting every calorie, which is what I'm doing. But even just being mindful of where you sit approximately in the day, I think gets you through these harder, tougher situations.
Who else wants to chime in here?
This is very much a subject that has never affected me.
Well, you're lucky. You're lucky about that. You're extremely lucky about that. I think this is a subject that pretty much affects a huge majority of the population. In fact, actually, let me ask you this, Andy. You said it's never affected you. You're saying that never in your life you've had to tell yourself, I'm not going to eat that second piece of cake because it wouldn't be reasonable.
I'm afraid that's true.
Okay, well then that's great.
And your t-shirt size that you requested was?
Well, large, but then again, that's down to build. It's not down to anything else.
Oh, you're large boned. That's what they used to say about me too.
I did have my bone density checked, and I'm right at the top of the scale.
Actually, getting back to what you were talking about, body mass index, Emil, there are scales that measure that. The fact is, though, because I tried to buy one and I bought one and it was a piece of crap. I mean, there are places where you can do this. What you have to do actually is measure the volume of the body, and you can only do that by getting into a pool. I don't know who does these. Somebody has this measurement. So you get the displacement, the water you displace in the pool is measured.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's the only real measurement.
So how do
The ultimate is effect.
Yeah, how do these automatic ones do it today? I've got a Bluetooth linked measuring scale, which tells me body mass index and muscle and water content. How the hell does it work that out?
To resistance.
So, yes, it actually measures the fat through resistance, because fat impacts resistance, and it does an approximation there. By the way, those are not particularly accurate either, but because it's just, based on a single metric, you have to decide a very complex thing. But it's approximation that kind of gets you there.
If you could actually measure the volume of your body, though, then you have an index.
Well, only the volume is not sufficient, though, right? You need to know the volume and the weight. Yeah. And I think a few of them actually go and there are these things that are popping out around here that actually, I think, do a body scan and then try to give you a more accurate breakdown of where you have the different fat stores. So I think it can go pretty far in terms of trying to decide this accurately.
You know, there's a big difference between men and women in this. Because if you're a man and you look down and you can't see it, you're definitely over.
I'm okay.
Don't look down there.
I'm not sure I approve of this new James framing.
Yeah, really, James.
Yeah,
you look like
I'm trying to get comfortable. There we are. There we are. How is that better?
Even that, you know, you look like an old Roman laying on the.
Oh, who's the famous actor?
I feel like an
Oh, now he lost his pod. He lost his iPod.
My pod back in.
His pod. What did they call it?
iPod.
No, the AirPod. You lost your AirPod.
That could be very nasty. Anyway, I've done my steps today. I've done my 10,000 plus steps, and I've been along the southwest coast path.
Yeah, James, I wrote you on Wire. Would please look at that and answer it when you have a chance.
Yes, I saw that.
Okay. And the answer is, did you transmit my message?
Sophie had a big chuckle about that.
Well, but we're going to have 50-50. 50 half men, half women in the panel.
You have my mother-in-law.
If she
tell you a thing or two, I'll tell you.
Oh, that'll be great. So make sure that you recruit these women. We're talking about Camino World in Berlin.
Yeah.
May 14th to 16th.
Yeah, Emil, when are we going to see you in person?
Yes.
Face to face?
When are you coming back to Europe?
Someday, definitely. The logistics of my family life are kind of complicated now. Well, I haven't yet figured out the new configuration. We had a new baby recently, so we have to go through the first few months first, I guess.
Yes,
and then
Emil version 3.0. You're stacking up those upgrades, aren't you?
Yeah, I guess like most people.
Yeah.
Contributing to the overpopulation of the planet. In fact, that I don't think that's accurate. It's not babies that contribute to the overpopulation. It's us old people not dying that contributes more.
Yeah, but you just have to concentrate on the quality. It's not so much the quantity; it's the quality that really matters.
Yeah. So why don't we do a little bit of eugenics, right? That's the logical next step.
Wow.
This escalated quickly.
No, that's not where I was going.
A bit too fast.
Emil,
I was joking.
We should. We pretty much well covered the physical aspects of things. You're on your walker thing now, whatever it's called.
Yeah, actually, that's actually another piece of advice that I'd like to give out, and it is
sitting is the new smoking.
It's I think so. The again, calories in, calories out, and calories out is just as important as the calories that you keep out of yourself. But also the calories that you spend are important. Exercise is super important for a few reasons. First of all, look it up. There's been peer-reviewed literature that says that exercise is an appetite suppressor. So it helps you that way. Secondly, you actually spend calories, which is not a huge amount, but it's some, but that's great. But also as you exercise, you increase your muscle mass, which just by having it, you increase your basal metabolic expenditure. That is, how much calories you spend just by living is impacted by how much muscle you have. So if you have more, you just cost more to maintain in life, So it's actually a pretty win-win situation. And now the problem with exercise is that it's so hard to work into your schedule, especially today where we're all mostly working on desks, and exercise often is viewed as something where I have to take the car and go to the gym and then undress, spend some time there, then shower, dress, and you probably end up spending 300% of the time where you actually work out, you end up spending it just dedicating to that activity, which is unsustainable. So my main thing there was try to work it into your daily schedule. This walking desk was number one, and then I just try to, there's this tool that you can use for meetings, called Stride from Atlassian, or Jitsi, which is the open source variant. You can use that on a mobile, and you can be just walking around the building where you work, in the parking lot, in the parking garage, and you can just do your steps and calorie spending while you're working. If you can make that happen, then that's probably your best chance into getting some decent movement in your day, as opposed to, I need to do this extra Zumba class 3 times a week. That's not going to cut it. Pretty sure. I mean, it's fun to do Zumba, but it's not going to be enough of a solution. So
one of the tips in my book that has over 100 different tips about losing weight and keeping fit is that every time you answer your phone, because phones are wireless now, so even your regular phone line thing is wireless. So whenever you're on the phone, you're up walking.
Yep.
And I've done that all over the years. Whenever I've had to make a call, I'm walking back. I'm pacing, always pacing when I'm on the phone.
Yes.
I'm not on the phone very often now, but I go out and do other things. And we don't have a car. So that's another thing, is that when we want to go someplace, we have to walk at least to a tram station, if not walking all the way to the thing. I walk personally, and I'm older than anybody that I can see in the film strip here. We walk at minimum of 7,000 steps a day. Now, I've seen people on Twitter, the people who have their Fitbits tweeting, and it's like, no, I walked 3,000 steps a day, and they're like 35. Well, I walked more than twice that, and I'm more than twice that age. So it gets a little silly. The point is, you should always be moving when you can.
100% agree.
Yeah, I mean, you should always be moving around, sitting around. I mean, I'm sitting 1 hour for this conference, but when I'm playing an instrument, I'm always standing up. By the way, if you play guitar, you play something, don't sit down when you play. I hate when people do that anyway, because that's like Pete Seeger folk. If you're going to play, if you're trying to say something, stand up. Don't sit down.
That's a good rule.
Unless you're in an orchestra.
A question for you, Emil. I mean, when you work, when you're at this walking desk, how do you adapt to that? Because
you learn to, actually. Yeah, that's a great question.
And
in fact, I used to have seasickness when I was using this at first, and looking at the screen.
Well, exactly, because you're moving all the time. So
yeah, it was very hard at the beginning. But it only takes you 2 or 3 days, and then you're used to it. Kind of like with seasickness, right? You get used to it, you get over it, and now I would say 95% of the work that I do, I can do while walking. Now, some things where I need to concentrate extremely hard, I would probably sit down for a little bit. But most of your work you can absolutely get done that way. You just learn to. And the other thing that I wanted to say, because of the VoIP history of this call, is that yes, Randy, picking every call over the phone and walking while we're doing it is absolutely one major piece of my personal puzzle. Having every meeting on the phone that way. And this headset is spectacular in letting you do that on the outside. So this is the Bose Quiet Comfort 35, first edition. Second edition is also cool. And what's great about it is obviously they have the traditional Bose noise canceling, which people are used to using on planes. It actually works great with traffic around you. You hear extremely well. But what is really great about this headset is that the same noise canceling is also applied on your microphone. So you can actually have a decent meeting with all the traffic around you, and people aren't bothered by the noise around you because it's canceled and hidden extremely well by this headset. So I'm just in love with it. Now, it has a few problems, like you cannot charge it and use it at the same time. But on the other hand, it has great battery life. So that's great. And
so, what about the other end from the headset? Is it just standard Bluetooth?
It's just standard Bluetooth, which is why you're hearing me at 16 kilohertz right now, as opposed to 48. But at least it's 16 and it's not 8. So
Yeah, but can you get 48?
No, and I think Michael would be happy to explain that. But you basically don't have enough bandwidth through Bluetooth to get 48 kilohertz.
And it's not even a question of bandwidth; it's a question of products. You don't have a large enough range of people who want to do this, and since everything's focused on mobile phones and such, like, going full band just doesn't make economic sense. DEC seemed to be stalled at 16 kilohertz, so does Bluetooth, and it'll be lovely when we don't have that constraint.
But what do you mean it's not a matter? I thought you actually couldn't fit both sides of the traffic in 48 kilohertz. I thought Bluetooth didn't give you enough bandwidth for that.
Well, using the codec, using the agreed upon codecs, but in Bluetooth, Bluetooth could evolve.
Right.
Could evolve to use better codecs, and we've got Opus before us, right? So what the heck?
Yes, sure, you're right.
But I suppose 16 kilohertz is good enough for most people.
Well, that's what you get with it. That's the sound. I mean, I could definitely tell the difference, but I'm also not that bothered by it when it's 16 kilohertz. So.
Yeah. Well, what bothers me is 8 kilohertz is what does bother me. I just can't do it anymore.
Emil and I have both been chasing, and there's probably 2 other people on the planet who've been chasing full bandwidth headsets for a long time, and they don't exist, or there are maybe a couple of wired gaming headsets that are capable, but that's it. And what happens is you end up going with a component system, and that doesn't lend itself to wireless without spending a ton of money. You end up getting like in-ear monitors like a stage performer would have, and a wireless headset like a stage performer would have. And it'd be like, I'm staging, Hamilton in my office here. For about $3,000.
There's clearly a gap in the market for somebody there, because you'd have one, Emil would have one, and I would have one as well. So
So as long as we're willing to pay $100,000 each, it should be fine.
No.
Well, it has to be supported by your phone as well, so we have to pay $100,000 to Apple too, which I'm sure they would be very excited about.
Well, here's the thing though, and everybody, like whether it's Bose or whatnot, they all seem to want to hide the microphone around by your ear, and some of them do a nice job of brightening it up, but a boom mounted headset is anomalous once you get into consumer products. So and it still works better.
Okay, anyway, going back to your Walking Desk thing, have you worn the thing out yet? Does it wear? Because you're using this thing continuously. Has it conked out yet?
I did wear out one. I actually bought 2. I bought one for the office. It actually started, we bought one together with a colleague, and we were supposed to, okay, I'll be using it half the day, you'll be using it the other half of the day. Then I ended up using it all the day. But that was when I started, so I was really very heavy, and I wore down the belt, so it started skipping at one point. But so when I bought the next one at home, I just bought a higher horsepower one, and that one doesn't seem to be wearing down for a year. So that's all the experience I have a year so far.
And
it's about $1,000.
What speed do you tend to walk?
So right now I'm at 3 miles an hour, and I go up to
quick.
4.
That's pretty quick. A lot of people do around 2, apparently.
I mean, whatever works for you. The fun fact here is that I found that most people do about 100 steps a minute. It's invariable. It seems to be, and when you go faster, your rate increases only a little bit. You mainly seem to be increasing the step size when you do that. So you can very easily count. Okay, well then 1,000 steps is 10 minutes, and then like 100 minutes gives you your daily 10,000 steps. So 100 minutes of walking is all we need.
Can you put it on a gradient to increase your workload?
Oh, well, that depends on the brand. Mine cannot do that. In fact, the ones that you can get for a desk are pretty simple in functionality, because it doesn't make sense for it to go up or down, or this is not a gym treadmill, but it gets me my steps. So
I love that you have the Bose product placement right on your left. How much?
Well, I really love it. This is actually a refurbished one that I bought for $250. They sold by Bose. The brand new one costs $350. Interestingly, Sony has a very comparable product that looks extremely sleek, priced exactly the same way, $350. They have a few interesting features, like you could do this, and it stops noise cancellation, and it drops down the volume so they can hear people around you. So it's a few cool gimmicks like that. But where it completely failed me was, first of all, Well, the microphone. It did. The noise cancellation on the microphone just didn't work. People complained all the time that there was too much noise, so I returned it. And then they went a little bit overboard with the options that they give you around. Oh, but activate smart noise cancellation without geolocation, with geolocation. And I never really knew, do I have noise cancellation now or not? And I wasn't able to quite figure it out. So it's a shame because it looked like a decent headset.
Can I move back to the walking? Aren't you concerned about wearing out your joints because it's a repeated activity, a repeated motion, constant? That I know it's the best exercise because it exercises all your body, but you're putting much of.
Oh my! So thank you for that question. I love that subject. You're going to be sorry for asking it because I'm not going to shut up for. I'm not going to shut up for 15 minutes.
We are made for walking, but
that's it. That's it. So I watched this TED talk.
I have in my mind, being conscious of the age I am now, of all the problems with hips and hip joints and everything else. Especially if you are a bit overweight, that's being subjected to quite an effort. So, is it a thing?
So here's a few things around that. First of all, from a purely how much effort does it take you to do it perspective, really, I'm just in love with walking because it's almost no effort. Like it's actually nice to think, oh, I'm going to go out for a walk, and I'm going to maybe listen to a podcast or have a conversation with someone over the phone. It's actually pleasurable for me to think that I'm going to go out for a walk and spend some time walking. This is probably the only one of the very few physical efforts that get you there. Like, I'm pretty sure most of the people who do jogging, if they're honest, would tell you, well, no, I don't actually love the jogging. I love having done it, but the very process of jogging is not particularly pleasurable. So that's the first thing. It's nice to do it. Now, when you go into the wearing down thing, there's this TED talk that I listened recently. I really need to look up. I'm going to look up the person. I'm going to try to give their name in a second. But basically, it was a guy that was explaining this curious fact about human evolution. So we know that our brains exploded in size about a couple million years ago. And we think that that's because we started eating more. We were able, for some reason, to kill more animals and eat more and be better nourished and get our brains to grow more. Now, how were we able to do that? Your first answer would be, well, because we were using tools and we could, throw spears and kill the antelopes, and that's how we got it. But we actually started using tools about 100,000 years ago. So there's a gap. What were we doing? What was our superpower in the jungle, in the steppes, in the savannas? What was our superpower that was letting us eat more? And the answer to that was really at the very core of it is just sweating. That's our superpower. We're great at sweating. We can go out there and walk and run in the heat and be fine with it. A horse cannot do that. A horse can either breathe and run, or it can cool down. It cannot do both. In fact, you probably all know that a horse is actually capable of dying because you overran with it. So back in the day, we would just go as a pack, as a hunting pack, and we would go after an antelope and basically just run it to death and eat it. And everything in our body seems to be extremely well evolved around maintaining that. The person giving this talk was was given as an example this tribe of Indians living, I don't remember if it was around where Mexico is, and I don't remember the name. I'm sorry for being so lame with this, but basically they had people doing 90 kilometers a day at the age of 80. And they've been doing that their entire lives. They just keep walking and walking and running and running and running. So I think that's personally where I drove my confidence from, in saying that, no, I don't believe that just walking, as long as you're doing it right, I don't believe that can wear down your joints or make you, or give you some trouble. I'm not a doctor. I know not what I'm talking about from a physiological perspective. So maybe don't trust me on this, but this is how I personally think about it.
I think a lot of professionals have advised me when I've consulted them that, unless you're experiencing pain or warning signals of any kind, this is actually, this kind of exercise is really good for you. So, the more the better. It keeps you fit. As far as hips and all that, legs, articulations, if you're not having a problem, it's probably positive. That's the medical opinion that I've gotten, and I think it's true. That's the way I feel too. I think that the most important thing of all this is not so much body image, that I'm fat, I'm not fat, but having to do with the real reward, which is how you feel. And I know that at one point in my life, I went very far into being overweight for a lot of reasons, but as soon as I got down to a much more reasonable level, I felt better every day. I felt better from the time I woke up, and I'm sure, Emil, I'm sure you're resonating with this. From the time I woke up all day to the end of the day, plus you also know that once in a while you can eat have the fries for lunch and big dessert. I wouldn't say you have 2 or 3 desserts, but have whatever the incredibly
or even breakfast.
Well, I mean, the incredibly sinful. Look, James, you mentioned that. Okay, so I'll never forget when we were in Madrid at the Auditorium Hotel, probably the first time I ever saw you, James. Although I don't think we met, actually. But the point is, they had the incredibly huge buffet breakfast in that hotel. It was the Auditorium, I think it was called.
And champagne, I remember.
You could you could probably eat 5,000 calories in that breakfast. I don't know. It was incredible. But even if you do that for 2 or 3 days, as long as that's not your life, you're going to come back. There is no short way that you're going to go either get really skinny or get really fat. It's all the sustained thing. So while you're sustaining the exercise, which Emil is showing us right now, I'll put the focus on him again because he is still, look at this guy. There he is. He's still doing that. I gave up a long time ago, but I already did my steps. Speaking of the Apple Watch, we'll keep track of this, but even any Android phone that you have will, if you want to give Google all your information. By the way, I wanted to talk about this for a couple of minutes too, about the privacy thing. So that's a good transition. Almost any device will give you the steps. I have a Radio Shack, a pedometer that will tell you all that information. It costs about $15 and it doesn't talk to anything online. How about that? So that's good. But if you have a Fitbit or you have even an Android phone, your Android phone, Google Fit will do it. If you don't like Google, somebody else probably does it. Point is, just a quick thing, because we've been going for just about an hour now. And I think we would be remiss in our duties for the folks who watch the VUC if we didn't all chime in just a little bit about the privacy thing, because it's become kind of absurd that people are going, well, Zuckerberg did this on his Senate House hearings. And I think calories in, calories out is for weight, and social media in, social media out is for privacy. If you're worried about your privacy, and I want to call on every single one of you here, and anybody on ZipDX, you hit *6, or anybody on IRC, please chime in on this. But if you're worried about your privacy, stop posting and tagging people on Facebook. I'm not saying Facebook, by the way, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is. If you're concerned about your privacy, don't feed those things. And if you're okay with it, feed them, and let's not talk about this anymore. Because what Facebook did may or may not be a big deal, but if you weren't caught in that net, then it doesn't mean anything to you. And the press in general, the tech press, but also just in general, is grabbing onto this like it's a big story. It isn't a big story. Who didn't know that you are the product? There is no product for things like Facebook, for platforms like Facebook. We're on YouTube right now. There is no product for YouTube. We're the product. You, the folks here on the podcast, we are putting out our video, and the rest of you who are watching it for free, because we're not charging anything, we're not asking for donations. You are the product. They're looking at you going, well, they watched the VUC, so they must be nuts. You know, I mean, this is basically how this stuff works. Who wants to talk? Corrado. Michael.
I object. I object on a singular basis. While there's a great deal of BS going around and the media is presenting a great deal of distraction, that's true. However, there is utility in the presentation, and that is this stuff needs to come into the public forum for discussion so that we in North America can get our wits collected and put together some policies about it like they have already done in the EU. And that won't happen unless we have the debate and the fervor and waste all the cycles and all of the PR exercise. So while I too find it frustrating that so many people don't seem to be aware of what was going on, I think we have to live through this.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you're disagreeing with Randy. He wasn't saying don't be mindful of it. But it's not. I think the problem here is, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Corrado. I'm going to shut up in a minute. I promise. By the way, the name that I wanted to mention was Christopher McDougall. The Indians that do live in around where Mexico is the Tarahumara tribe. Coming back to this, blaming Facebook for your privacy issues is a little bit like blaming the Mars Corporation for your weight control issues. No one force-fed you these things. Yeah. And a little bit of the problem around there seems to be, it's funny, a little bit as the problem that you have with diets. Don't think of it as a religious thing. It's not binary. It's not either O in or O out. That's a misconception that people often have with security. Something is either secure or it's not. It's either kosher or it's not. And that's not how it works. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. We've been doing we've been solving security-related problems in Jitsi for a while. And the question of, is it secure, is just always irrelevant. It's not, is it secure? It is in this situation, does it protect me against this specific risk? That is a question that you can answer. Is it secure? Although many people would answer that question, is a wrong thing to ask, because it doesn't have nothing is, I can always be next to you and actually overhear through the door what you're saying, and whatever tool you were using didn't protect you because it wasn't meant for that. So while I agree that you can have some regulations in place where, look, we think that a chunk of people are actually not realizing what you're doing, so we think you shouldn't do that unless you get them to agree or something like that. That's reasonable. But also, you can protect yourself today and just be a reasonable user of Facebook. I would like to know where my friends have babies, so I'm going to be on Facebook just to keep updated on that. But then I'm not going to post 5 pictures a day and tagging everyone and subscribing to every game that I find and then be appalled about how is it that these people know about me. So I think that's the middle ground. That it's always about, it's like fake facts. You have to do a little bit of legwork to learn how to distinguish between what's true and what it isn't. You just have to do the work of keeping yourself informed. It's never going to be binary simple.
That's going back to my bugbear that you need a driving license to get a car, but you can buy a PC and destroy your life in about 15 minutes being inadvertently stupid without any type of license. If we have the European computer license of something that should have been a staple of everyone that was so eventually informed of how a computer works and what is included in using a computer that went into nothing. You can destroy your entire family life with a computer connected to internet in minutes if you're not careful.
Yeah, but so what? I mean, you can wire yourself up to 240 volts AC and kill yourself that way. But that doesn't mean that we have to be
it's actually difficult. it's actually difficult to do that because there are protections. You cannot stick a screwdriver inside one of the plugs, especially in Great Britain, because they're protected.
You can in the States easily.
Yeah. Okay, so we are measuring the smartness or dumbness of people on the plugs that they have available. But the problem is, with a computer, if you click on the wrong thing on the right phishing email, you get your bank account emptied, your credit rating destroyed, your credit cards closed, and your life is ruined because your mortgage falls backwards. They foreclose your house. You get homeless. So it's a disaster waiting to happen. And there's a lot of people that don't understand that. It's the same people that is always on Facebook posting whatever is about their life, their private life. You can join the dots and know where they've been, what company they have, what are the political tendencies, what are the sexual tendencies, everything that is covered by the Data Protection Act and in the very near future by the General Data Protection Regulations. You can glean them from the public feed of these people. They're not aware that that is so easy, that they can be captive and captured by anyone, even well-intended people, and that is a problem that we need to face. It's education.
But this is still all a part of the fact that probably everybody here, maybe Corrado may be the exception, I don't know. Have you ever read the entire user agreement when you're trying to get an app and you want to do, maybe some people do, a lot of us don't, and when I don't, I just assume the worst of an app. So, you know what? We're all familiar with Wire, which is a terrific application, and it's not Facebook in any means. We know the people who do it, and yet Wire will ask for your contact list to make it easier to see if anybody on Wire is someone you know. I personally would assume that Wire's trustworthy in that particular aspect of it.
Yeah, only because we know the people.
Because we know the people, and we know the people who know the people, if you will. In other words, the whole thing is kind of pretty legitimate as far as we know. But suppose that Evil Corp bought Wire someday, and before they tell us, they've got all our contacts. LinkedIn does that. Facebook, everybody does that. Instagram, if you're on Instagram, they go, well, why don't you post it for this Facebook contacts? And by the way, your contacts, that's one huge thing that they take, but they take a lot of other stuff too. Anyway,
we've got to be aware that this technology is potentially dangerous. It's like anything like
as he said,
internal combustion engine or rocket
electricity,
fuel,
kerosene,
nuclear fission. They are all incredible.
Well, we don't have that at home though, James.
Well, yet.
Although I do,
but they can be dangerous.
Pretend I mean,
another example. What about all those super secret US bases that were uncovered because personnel were wearing these exercise-related aids?
Oh, right.
Which then plots where you go and exercise, and you could go online on a public internet feed, and you could see these super secret bases in the middle of nowhere in the Nevada desert.
Yeah,
just because these people going round and round and round in circuits. You think, what the hell's going on there? It's just an example.
True.
Anyway, with all of these things, there are pluses and there are minuses. And I think on balance, the pluses do outweigh the minuses by quite a large margin. So that is why I will continue to use social media, because to me, it's very valuable. I get a big buzz out of seeing Emil's new arrival, for example.
Emil, did you post that on Facebook?
Yes.
I did actually. I figured that at the age of 1 month, you're probably looking anonymous enough that your photo wouldn't be a big deal.
Okay, but when the kids are young,
no, I'm not. My 3-year-old son, I would never post a picture
you're
of
not
him.
going to do that. Yeah, I hate when people do that. I'm sorry for all you parents out there, but I think it's kind of disgusting. You do that privately, that's one thing. If you're sure of the privacy of it, even. But hey, there's email and other ways to do that. Hey, that brings us to another one of my little bugbear. Is that the word you use, Corrado?
Yes.
Vocal interface. Okay, so this is a big deal. Oh, by the way, parentheses, because I'm the king of digression. Is anybody using Google Lens? This is terrific.
Yeah, I started it.
Okay, Google Lens is a thing that you can photograph somebody's business card and it'll read the text in, or you photograph a monument someplace where you're not familiar and it will tell you what the monument is. Well, the other day I was walking around Bordeaux here and I said, well, what the heck? I photographed a church and it said, this is Notre Dame in Paris. Well, it's not. It's hundreds of kilometers away, so it has nothing to do with Notre Dame. It is a cathedral, but it isn't Notre Dame. Then I did another one.
You know why probably that error was? Because you didn't have the location on your phone.
I'm sorry to say, Jane, you ignorant slut, which is from Saturday Night Live. No, Corrado, I do have the location. It's high precision, and that's.
But it said Paris. It actually identified.
That's one thing that surprised me is that I have location. They know where I am at any given time, and it didn't use location apparently. And the second
the
thing
question is
wait.
How do they correct this?
I don't even know.
What do you do when it gives you something which is blatantly wrong?
Well, I don't care. I make fun of them. That's how they correct it. And
give me a second. Probably you had location enabled on your phone, but it was not enabled on the camera, so the location on the photograph was not.
But it is. It is.
So that was completely a bug.
Because you can, it's a little problem. And the other thing is, this is one of those, AI is going to take over the world. And another thing is that I saw a poster for some mobile company. It was an offer for €9. I posted this someplace, and I don't remember exactly, but say it was $9.99 a month for 30 gigs data and unlimited calling, blah, blah, blah. And it said something like, whatever the name of it was, happens to be the name of a Parisian nightclub. So the maps lens showed the name of the nightclub, which again, Paris. I'm not in Paris. I don't have a VPN going through Paris. But anyway, what I wanted to get to point is that that's silly.
This is a really, really good segue. Just to talk very briefly about James Tagg's new thing. I don't know whether you saw that. He broke cover with it, bizarrely enough, on the Free Switch conference last week or this week.
Tell us.
A couple of days ago, and it's all about AI and how you make the AI ecosystem work. So, at its lower level, there's a cryptocurrency, a blockchain-based cryptocurrency, which gives value. But bear with me. It's all about how you correct things that are wrong, and your own personal data has value. And the ability to answer a specific question correctly has a value. So if you hit an instance where you ask the artificial intelligence a question and you get something that's blatantly wrong, but you can answer it, then you can correct that particular fault. But that algorithm that you use to solve that question, you kind of copyright. Now it's the wrong term, but you can set it up so that you've corrected it. If anybody asks that question again, they'll get the correct answer, but you get recognition for answering that question, and therefore you get rewarded for answering that question.
Well, let's get James on, okay?
Let's make that happen. As usual, it's one of these really, really, really very, very clever James Tagg concepts.
Well, let's get him on. Let's get him on.
The tricky bit is going to be implementing.
Okay, implementing it. Let's get him on and hear him talk about it. But I did want to finish with the home devices, because you all are very big on. Corrado, do you have a home device? Do you have an Alexa or Home? Or
Nope.
Okay, so
I rarely use OK Google on my phone, but no mobile devices, no home automation.
Right, Google Assistant, which I do use, and so I'm right in that world, even though I condemn it.
And I use both Alexa and Google all of the time. I find it incredibly useful.
I know I can answer for Michael since he's not paying attention or something. But
Alexa, turn off the study lights.
There we go. Well, that's the answer to that. And it worked. You look pretty good without the lights.
Brilliant.
Wait a second. I can't, cursor's not available. Leave them off for a second. I wanted to see, you actually look pretty good without the lights. Why? Is there a light from the screen? Was that what that was?
Yeah, I think so.
Because it was like dark. Look at that. That's his camera works really well.
Yeah, those are actually, this is the C940 and the Brio actually works less well, I find.
Look at that. No, but I mean, seriously, that's actually excellent. That's good to know. So you're just looking, that's just the light from your screen.
Yes, that's just a light from you, actually, Randy. You're illuminating me.
Well, that's because I have a lot of white behind me. Anyway.
Yes.
Andy, you probably have those devices.
I have an Alexa, although my wife uses it solely for timing cooking, as do the kids. But there are odd things.
What do the kids use it for?
Timing cooking. That's pretty much it. It gets used as an expensive.
You do that on your watch, can't you?
Yeah, you can quite easily.
I mean, my watch has a thing. I just click twice, and you enter a number, and it'll do it. And your phone, of course, will do that too.
Well, yeah, indeed. But it doesn't do it easily by remote voice.
I've got one thing.
Well, Google Assistant will do that
really well. It gives me 5 minutes warning when Sophie's coming home.
The 5-minute warning.
What's the detection threshold for that?
It's on her phone.
Yes, when she goes out of coverage.
No, it's on location, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Through what? Google, the Googleverse?
Well, there are a number of ways of doing it, but yes.
Amazon doesn't have. Tell us.
No. If this, then that.
It's in.
You use if this, then that to patch the things.
Yeah, but I mean, what is it using as a signal?
Oh, the location thing comes from Google.
Okay, so it is Google.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's important, and that answers the question partially of what we're talking about. What do you get out of all this? Now, there's a lot of great stuff. I used to fill in my weight and stuff every day, Emil, on Google Fit, but eventually I gave up on that. That's really stupid because I didn't need it particularly, and why should I be giving that away? They're probably using it not necessarily personally, but in aggregate with a bunch of other people. By the way. When I was using Fit, it would say, what was that message? That basically indicated that I was probably the only person using Google Fit in Bordeaux. I can't remember what it was said. Something like I was I had the most steps. Some silly. Yeah, well, it wasn't that, but it was some silly thing like that. Anyway, these home devices, so nobody's worried about them recording you or talking to Amazon. No, there's no worry there, right?
I am. That's why I'm not using them.
But what's the risk? What are you worried about?
Well, it's about listening to what I'm doing and doing something that I don't want them to do.
Like who?
Accidentally.
Like what?
No.
Like
They're listening continuously. They're making traffic to Google or Amazon servers. They're consuming electricity. They're consuming. I don't like the fact that there's something that is continually transmitting somewhere.
You have a mobile?
When I need it, I press a button or do something specific. I don't want something that is always listening. That's all.
It's not. It's just to be clear, though. It's not actually sending your traffic all the time.
No. But I mean, if you just in general, for example, I just updated my OS here, Mac OS, and Siri, you know this, James, and I guess you're the only one. When you update, so Siri is now available on the Mac if you're updated to Sierra or High Sierra. And the disclaimer that you have to sign, by the way, I don't like Siri, and I didn't. I just said skip. And they go, you sure you want to skip Siri? It's awfully useful. I go, yes. But the point is that's part of the disclaimer in this, the thing that you're signing for Siri says explicitly, you know, for Siri to work, we're going to be sending this stuff up to Apple servers, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, this is a not mainframe, but it is a computer that, for better or worse, has enough power to compute this stuff, whereas your phone may or may not. But point is that, yes, if you're going to be using a cloud model where somebody else's server is going to be determining the translation or the dictation. Hey, how does Google Dictate work, by the way? When you're talking to your SMS, James, when you're talking to your SMS or anybody, it's going up to the server to be dictated, right? So somewhere that stuff is being, if it's not logged, it's up there anyway.
Speech to
Yeah,
text,
what
of
I
course.
meant was that
Speech to text.
it doesn't all the time send the speech that you're sending. It only starts doing so after the trigger words. So it's not really different than pushing a button.
Well, I was talking about the phone, actually. I was talking about where you actually explicitly say, hey, take this dictation. And if you say, take this dictation, a bomb has been planted in such and such a street. I mean, it's going up there. Not that any of us would want to do that or anything else.
I find a lot of this stuff really, really useful. So, for example, I'm currently in Cornwall, but I can just look at home and see, we left my 18-year-old son at home in charge, and I can just check and see whether he's got his girlfriend there or not. And I know that because when she arrives, her iPhone picks up an IP address from my router, and I know exactly what the MAC address of her iPhone is, because every time she pops up, I get a message saying Lucy's just arrived.
So I would love to chime in here, because I used to be very worried about these same things, or rather very untrustworthy, and I would be extremely careful and cynical about what happens to that data once it leaves your place. And all of that is still valid from a technical perspective. Yes, Facebook could be potentially listening on every single message that you can be sending. And yes, an Alexa employee, an Amazon employee could potentially be eavesdropping on me through the Alexa device. In theory, technically, that's possible. If you are a very high value target, then it might even be happening. But actually having arrived at one of the Americans' bigger corporations, I've seen the other side of things. And I was very pleasantly surprised to see at what level of, what's the word, paranoia, of meticulousness, cautiousness there is around handling customer data. It is a #1 thing that everyone freaks out about. If you go and mistakenly commit a line of code that dumps into a log something like an IP address, all sorts of alarms go out, and everyone's like, whoa, what the fuck are you doing? No, we're not supposed to be doing this. So this is, I feel much better now saying that, no, it's not actually easy for every average developer in Amazon to come and listen and fuck with me. It's not actually that easy for that to happen. Now, if I was a major crime thing and I was a crime syndicate and I was of interest to the CIA, now I'm sure they'll work out a way to force Amazon to do that for me, but that's going to have to go through so many hoops that it makes me feel comfortable enough with using Amazon at home without worrying too much.
Well, the problem that happened with Cambridge Analytica and Facebook and the developer mode on Facebook that opened a can of worms that people, you were connected. If you played a game, you could, the developer could access all the data of all your friends, is because some corporations are not careful enough in protecting our data. So I'm not 100% confident that I can rely on their goodwill. I prefer to play safe, and yeah, I want something that I can activate myself. It's good a keyword, it's good with I don't know, a button or something. I don't want something that is always transmitting data somewhere. I'm happy for Google to know where I am. I have location tracking on my phone, but I try to limit what I do. The problem is we are geeks. We know these things. The vast majority of people doesn't know, and everything is probably some way or another open to abuse. Possibly. I don't want that to happen.
Totally true, Corrado. And if any of you have a friend, I have a friend, and if any of you have lived the situation where suddenly someone who's probably well over 70 years old decides he needs a smartphone, and they get started with it, you really don't know where to begin. It's actually not that easy for us to find the settings unless you've memorized them, because there's so many settings in all these things. Facebook itself has 1,000 settings. When I was in Facebook, we basically know what we're doing, and you have to try to search through all of their settings. Google is the same. Google has a very extensive way of you can remove your history. You can delete your history easily. You can download with Takeout. You can download all the things you've posted on any Google service. And I think that's commendable. But the point is that the average person has no idea. And basically right now, and this goes back to, I think you were saying, Michael, the average person knows nothing about this and probably didn't care about it. So maybe all this discussion does do one thing, which is that although I'm sick of hearing about it, and most of us are, and we're not impressed by it, but at the same time, maybe the average person is starting to realize, well, I better start paying attention. And that would be my conclusion. So I'm agreeing with you on that. Who else has anything to say before we go? Because we have 50% extra bill on the satellite fees today, but anything, it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
A very small example of something that already happened quite a while ago and nobody noticed, but I did. I have an LG Smart TV that could be connected to a webcam. I didn't have the webcam at the time, but about a year and a half ago, the TV came up with a new user agreement because the software they had inadvertently was continually feeding pictures from the camera back to LG servers, to the servers for whatever was the service that they were offering. So again, it's so easy to be caught into these things, and your privacy is precious. We need a little bit more awareness around that.
And we don't know that anybody actually was listening to this, was seeing any of that. But yeah, you're totally right. And I remember that.
That is exactly why having semi-skilled geeks like us around who are willing to spend time, invest time in identifying every last IP stream going out of our routers, that is important.
There is that. By the way, I said this was the end, but there's another thing I wanted to get into, and we don't necessarily have to. I just want to mention that I heard that Amazon, the darling of James and a few of you, is actually thinking about trying to replace conference servers with an enterprise version of whatever their thing is. It's not Alexa, it's the other more evolved. What are those things called?
Chime.
Whatever it is.
Oh, Alexa for enterprise, or
not Alexa? It's the other. What's the other? Home? Not home. It's confusing because everybody's got something.
What, the one with video feed?
Echo Show.
Echo. They're talking Echo for enterprise, I believe. I maybe have the name wrong, but the point being that you're going to be able to go in there and go, okay, what's our figures for Q3? Which is, fine.
And that comes back to this AI thing as well. As soon as you can do that and you start getting good answers back because somebody has invested the time and effort in training the thing to give it the answers that are useful to you, then the whole thing becomes, invaluable.
Well, to us, sorry.
Yeah, and the problem with a lot of this Alexa stuff at the moment is that it really does only does basic stuff. So you can ask it about the weather or get it to play a Randy Resnick track.
But wait a minute, James. Like asking, I was about to say precisely that in your example that asking for the weather report, which I do on Google from time to time, I say, "What's the weather?" Forecast. But the point is asking for Q3 figures. If you're in an enterprise and it has access to your data, that's not artificial intelligence. That's a no-brainer for the system. So that's not actually anything advanced. But the reason I mention this at all is because I think they're looking to replace these Polycom and other conference room systems, and that's something that touches our history at any rate.
Can I point you out just to a very amusing...
If we can read this, go ahead.
Little
Yeah, it's struggling with the focus a bit. I think.
Hold on.
Yeah, it's all right. It's good enough. I've read it, and it's very good.
Can you read it out then, Andy? Because I'm struggling with it on my iPad.
Okay. So Dilbert's boss says, we want a contract to write software for voting machines. Dilbert says, who do you want to be president? He said, why did you say that? Because I want you to be happy. You're implying that you're planning, I think that's supposed to say, to fudge the system? I'm not implying anything like that. Obviously, it'll be easier to fudge the data, and we're far happier when you're in a good mood. But I would never commit a crime just because it's good for me and totally unacceptable. Okay,
undetectable.
Good. Yeah, undetectable. Yeah. So who did you want me to win, and by how much?
Yeah.
So we are relying on the goodwill of small, medium, and large corporations and companies not to do nasty things. We know it doesn't happen. We need to be a little more careful.
And this is why the role of the individuals who run checks and balances and make a lot of noise when things aren't right is so important.
You mean politicians?
Well, no, it's not politicians. It's people like
more like whistleblowers,
like whistleblowers and the EFF, for example, who when things aren't right, they just make a lot of noise about it, and things get better.
Yeah, usually.
I think, James, you're phrasing it exactly right, and I'm anxious to make sure that I'm not saying there's no potential to do harm here. There is a lot of it. And there's a way for you to ruin your life. There's a way for very bad things to happen. But the answer to that, I believe, is not just don't use any of it, because in that case, you might as well go and live in a cave somewhere. The answer to that is let's try to continue to have a debate. Let's continue to have a debate. Continue to have proper regulations in place, and educate people. All of these things, right? It's the solution that I'm arguing with. It's not go monk, become a recluse. That's what I'm arguing.
And you could say exactly the same thing for Brexit. You've got all these people going, I think Europe is rubbish. Well, rather than disengaging from it, why don't you just go out and fix it rather than tear down the bridge? It's just so frustrating.
Yeah.
Because every politician I've ever met is a dodgy second-hand car salesman. That's why.
Well, you haven't met enough. There are some good ones out there.
To end on a positive note for humanity, in California, I think it was, a woman was filmed having an altercation with a cyclist that she didn't like what the person did. And she went a little further down the road, made a U-turn, and ran the person over, which was also filmed. The point being that a car is a weapon. I mean, everything's a weapon, and obviously guns are weapons, but also cars are weapons, and all of this stuff we've been talking about could be weaponized. Your data...
Yes, social media certainly is a weapon.
Yeah, social media, but I mean, your data, we've been talking about voting machines. So I guess the real bottom line of all of this, before I close the thing that's going to do this, is that really we need to make sure that everybody, what can we do, those of us individuals on the little film strip, which I'm not showing right now. What we can do is make sure that we keep doing what we've been doing, which is to tell Uncle Fred and Aunt Tilly and your grandma and everybody else to make sure that they stay safe and to make sure that they understand about what Corrado was saying earlier about clicking on links. People are probably, all of our relatives and friends are probably sick of hearing about this. Stop with the CCing of your silly stories, by the way, and having 70 people in that list, because you just put me in somebody's address book and then they're going to be hacked and then my address is going to be in there. There's just so many things to teach people. And we could do a whole number on that, but we should probably just end this right now. Stop the suffering by thanking Emil. Emil, it's always great to have you. You know that we went through a lot to get you because you are
it's absolutely great to be here.
Busy guy.
Yeah.
Our best.
What I want to do is to hack into Emil's treadmill so that we can gradually wind up the speed.
Yeah, really. Trip him.
Let's get him working a bit harder.
Very subtly,
bring it on.
Trip him. Let's trip him.
It was great speaking to you guys.
Thanks, Emil. Thanks to Andy.
we love you,
Thank you,
love you, Emil, and we want to see more of you.
And we miss
you. Know
you.
what?
Come back.
And I'm looking forward to our
Always a
next
pleasure.
breakfast.
Come back to Europe. But he won't only eat one steak this time, James.
Well, no,
Even
it can still be 2 breakfasts, but it'll be lots of fresh fruit and stuff instead.
There you go.
2 tiny breakfasts.
Thanks to Andy, Corrado, Emil, James, Michael, and anybody else who was listening or cares about any of this. We will see you next time. We're going to the mature audiences only version. Ciao.